Gitu Yuwat. It's Friday, April 22nd. This is Africa 54.
Former Kenyan President Mwai Kibaki, who served as Kenya's third president from 2003 to 2013, has died. How young people are coping with hopelessness over the impact of climate change. And the African FinTech Summit aims to spur stronger momentum, both in investment and market growth on the continent.
We begin in East Africa, where Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta announced Friday that former President Mwai Kibaki has died. VOA's Paul Ndiho has more.
Former President Mwai Kibaki, who served as Kenya's third president from 2003 to 2013, died at age 90. Kibaki is credited with reviving Kenya's then ailing economy. Still, his tenure was marred by deadly violence that erupted following his disputed re-election by his opponent Raila Odinga in December 2007. Thousands of people were killed in months of ethnic violence before an agreement was reached with the help of outsiders. President Uhuru Kenyatta ordered a mourning period to honor Kibaki, during which flags will be flown at half-mast.
Emilio Mwai Kibaki was a quintessential patriot whose legacy of civic responsibility will continue to inspire generations of Kenyans long into our future.
Kibaki ushered in economic reforms and a new constitution for Kenya, but some say that he failed to deliver on his promise to stomp out corruption. A British-educated economist, Kibaki's characteristic calm demeanor concealed political shrewdness that finally propelled him to the presidency. After 4 decades as a lawmaker, government minister and vice president to his predecessor, Daniel Arap Moi. His landslide win in 2002 upset Moi's hand-picked successor, the current president Uhuru Kenyatta. In a wheelchair and a leg cast after a car crash, Kibaki promised his ecstatic inauguration crowd a clean break from Moi's autocratic rule. However, the honeymoon did not last long, and cracks soon appeared in NAC, an alliance of parties opposed to Moi. He served as finance minister for 13 years under both Kenyatta and Moi, and as Moi's vice president for some of that time. Kibaki was among Kenya's richest men, overseeing vast land holdings and business interests. When he handed over power to President Kenyatta in 2013, Kibaki retreated to his home in one of Nairobi's poshest neighborhoods, close to his beloved Muthaiga Golf Club. He is survived by several children and grandchildren. Paul Ndiho, VOA News, Washington.
For more on President Mwai Kibaki's life and legacy, I'm joined by Africa 54 Managing Editor Vincent Makori. Vincent, welcome back to the studio. Great to have you here.
It's a pleasure.
Now, the late President Mwai Kibaki was a man of many successes, and one of the most remembered thing about him was serving during a critical time in the transition of Kenya's one-party state to multi-party democracy. What more do you remember about his legacy?
Yes. First, you have to remember that this is the guy who was vice president to the former president, Daniel Arap Moi. That critical moment when the country was kind of struggling to get out of a one-party rule that had been the life of Kenyans for over 30 years, over 35. So he worked, he left the government and joined the opposition, formed a coalition, and later joined hands with one of the most influential opposition leaders, Raila Odinga. And they campaigned together, and he became the person that trounced President Moi, and literally the first time in Kenya created a culture where people now had a hope that a country can transition from a one-party state to regular election. He became the first president to be elected after continuous rule of President Moi for 24 years, and immediately went to work. He promised to fight corruption. He promised to develop the country because the economy had been lagging for a long time, but also freedoms for the people. He guaranteed at that time freedoms because the country had been under an authoritarian regime. People lived in fear. We experienced it. But when he came on, I was there. I covered that election, 2002. When he was inaugurated, the country felt like it had just gained independence. I personally imagine that is how Kenyans must have felt in 1963.
And then came the moment when he declared free education for primary school. How significant was that for school-going children?
That meant a lot because there were thousands, hundreds of thousands of children who could never go to school because in Kenya, people had to pay fees to take their children to elementary school. And that left so many of the poor kids out. When he declared free primary education, hundreds of thousands of children who had been actually some of them street children, others who were just home with no hope for the future, were able to go to school, and that gave hope to the parents, gave hope to the nation. I remember former President Bill Clinton one time was asked, who is the president, the person that you would want to meet right now? And he said, the president of Kenya, Mwai Kibaki, for declaring free primary education to the Kenyan children.
Obviously, you know, the two of us come from there. We know that he did a lot. He was an economist, and he put that to work in the country. But he was also known for a great sense of humor. What do you remember? He
had a great sense of humor in that he spoke things as he saw them. And many times he didn't care. If he wanted to make his point, he would use some of, sometimes he used expletives in public, but he came out so in a very comical way, and people used to enjoy mimicking him. But as an economist, I have to say quickly that he helped to revive the economy that was dying. So he proved that he was a true economist. The country was set on a trajectory of development, and from that time on to all corners of the country. And I remember reviving, for example, the Kenya Meat Commission, which had died under President Moi, reviving the milk sector, reviving agriculture, and under the devolved government, in fact, he took development to the different parts of the country. But of course, he also was, unfortunately, will be remembered for the election of 2007, where he refused to concede. For many, they believed he had won, he lost that election, and for refusing to concede, plunged the country into chaos.
Vincent, very, very great insight about the legacy of the late President Mwai Kibaki. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Vincent Makori is Africa 54 Managing Editor. Kenya says the 7 countries of the East African community have agreed to set up a regional military force to try to end decades of bloodshed caused by militant activity in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, despite billions of dollars spent on one of the United Nations' largest peacekeeping forces. More than 120 rebel groups continue to operate across the eastern part of Congo, 2 decades after the official end of DRC's civil wars. Mali's ruling junta has announced the launch of a 2-year transition process before elections are held in defiance of its West African bloc partners. The military seized power in August 2020 and has been under pressure to return the nation to democratic rule. In March, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, demanded that Mali hold elections within 12 to 16 months. Prime Minister Choguel Maïga spoke about the situation.
I don't think there will be any significant changes in the mandate of the UNMISS, but we must remember that our sovereignty, our independence, our defense, and our security can only be guaranteed by our army, supported at times by our partners.
Mali has struggled with a decade-long insurgency that the deployment of foreign forces has failed to resolve. The killing of Patrick Lyoya, a 26-year-old Congolese refugee, has outraged members of his family and triggered protests in Grand Rapids, Michigan by activists who say it represents the latest example of police violence against young black men. Lyoya's family is demanding that authorities dismiss the officer who shot him from the force and file criminal charges against him. Grand Rapids police were not immediately available to comment in response to the independent autopsy findings that reveal Lyoya was shot once in the back of the head, according to forensic pathologist Werner Spitz. Grand Rapids police officials have placed the officer, who has not been named publicly, on administrative leave and have asked the Michigan State Police to investigate the shooting. The funeral for Lyoya is being held Friday, and that's where VOA's Marius Muhunga is standing by live. Marius, tell us about today's activities.
Hi, Esther. I'm here in front of Renaissance Church of God. Here is taking place the funeral of Patrick Lyoya. There are many people, more than 1,000 people are inside of the church, and the ceremony will be hosted by one of the most known civil rights movement, Reverend Pastor Al Sharpton, and people were handling T-shirts of Patrick Lyoya outside of the church, asking for justice for Patrick Lyoya. And there are also Ben Crump, who is a well-known civil rights attorney. He's also here. He's the one that represents the family. So many people have traveled from around the country to come to attend this funeral here in Grand Rapids.
Marius, when you talk to those who are attending the funeral, what do they say, the family and friends? How do they remember Lyoya?
Yes, many people that I've talked to. Yesterday I was talking to the parent of Patrick Lyoya. His dad said that he's remembering Patrick Lyoya not really as his son, but as his friend. He was a very kind guy, a very nice guy. He was the one that was helping his family, his brothers and sister. So he was really remembered as a very, very good guy in the community, Congolese community here in Grand Rapids.
And so far today, were the police in attendance? Did they issue any statement during the funeral?
No, there is no police outside. Most of people that are here are not police. No presence of the police outside of the church. Only people, mostly from Congo, from Africa, but we also see people from Black Lives Matter and other leaders of the black community of Grand Rapids.
Thank you so much. Marius Muhunga is reporting live for us from the U.S. state of Michigan. The Africa FinTech Summit returned this week for its 7th event in Washington, D.C. FinTech was the fastest growing industry in Africa last year. Now investors and entrepreneurs are expecting a stronger momentum in both investment and market growth. Here's VOA's Abisan.
Thank you, Esther. Last year, FinTech investment in Africa hit a record high of $1.6 billion, over 153 deals. At the summit, I talked to Akshay Grover, the CEO of Cellulant, one of the largest digital payment systems in Africa. And he said, all signs are pointing at one direction.
I think the biggest sign is how many people are turning entrepreneurs every year. How many new ideas are coming to the ground every day. And I think that number has multiplied in the last 2-3 years. How do we include these new players into a system? And so regulation is beginning to think about or cater to these new areas that are coming about. So that's a third indicator that there is a lot more happening on the ground than there ever was before.
For Hamstone Mararia, co-founder and CEO of WirePay, solving real-life problems drives innovation. Key services in FinTech remain payments and transfers. With $50 million of capital flowing in sub-Saharan Africa last year, remittance is a major obstacle for many African diaspora's daily life, while solutions were accelerated during the pandemic.
So remittances are a critical part of the growth and development of the African continent. And that's why we decided to start WirePay, to enable African immigrants, especially from sub-Saharan Africa living in the USA, to be able to send money back home.
The event attracts not only key players like Flutterwave and major banks in Africa, but also small and medium investment firms. Cameroonian venture capitalist Eunice Ajim said her own business benefits from payment system innovation, and now she is focusing on supporting all solutions solving problems in Africa. And those problems don't have to be solved by fintech, nor being too advanced.
If you want to travel, let's say from Lagos to Abuja, you have to go to a bus agency. You have to manually pay for your bus tickets, maybe wait a few hours to find out, which bus is leaving at a particular time. So he built an application to make it easy for you to get your tickets online, exactly what time the bus is leaving. Is a problem that, affects a lot of African countries because that's the way we move from one place to another. But also it's easier for him to escape from Nigeria, to Rwanda, to Kenya, to Cameroon.
According to the co-founder of Africa FinTech Summit, Zakaras Amasalu, this event featured 20 conversations across various topics such as African FinTech as a new global asset class, banking system digitalization, and how to solve the remittance challenge for the diaspora, and cryptocurrency redefining the meaning of money. From what I can tell from the event and the people I talked to, I think it's safe to say 2022 will be a robust year for fintech industry in Africa.
Abby, thanks. VOA's Abby San reporting on the FinTech Summit. Would like to hear what you think about Africa 54. Africa 54's new Facebook address is facebook.com/VOA Africa. Still to come, a vintage performance by an Afrofusion band from Zimbabwe. We'll be right back.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science, and technology.
City, rural, educated, or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
The United Nations says climate change is expected to accelerate at an unprecedented pace if governments don't act soon. VOA's Julie Tabo spoke with a few young people about their concerns for the fate of the planet.
These young students are picking up litter and removing garlic mustard in a wooded park in Washington, D.C. Removing invasive species helps native plants flourish. And the students say they feel like they're contributing in a small way to a healthier planet.
I want other people, even generations from now, to be able to have the same experiences I've gotten to have in Rock Creek.
A recent report by a United Nations panel predicts that the planet is heading toward environmental catastrophe if governments don't take immediate drastic action to curtail climate change. The bracing headlines about Earth's future are contributing to what some experts call eco-anxiety, or climate change distress, found especially among the young. Some feel there is little they can do. Others feel spurred to action.
I think like a lot of people in my generation, we're really afraid right now, and it's really easy to feel helpless.
But Amelia counters that helpless feeling by volunteering regularly at the park.
I chose to do this because it felt like something that I could do that was tangible, that was a way of actually helping the environment, of helping my community.
Nearly half of young people between the ages of 16 and 25 say anxiety about climate change negatively affects their daily lives, according to a recent global survey in the medical journal, The Lancet.
We're seeing the impacts of drought, the impacts of extreme heat in cities, the impacts on agriculture and food shortages. But what I'm finding is that more and more people, especially young people, have the temerity to say, there's solutions we know that we can do to reduce some of the impacts of climate change and to help us adapt. And we can't do nothing.
A common message by the experts is to take small actions in your own life to reduce your carbon footprint.
You can do something as simple as meatless Mondays. Switch to a plant-based diet. If you can walk somewhere, then walk. Reduce, recycle, and reuse is a concept that's really coming about.
Becoming politically active is another way young people can address their eco-anxiety, like Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg.
We need to focus every inch of our being on climate change.
For youth to see someone like Greta having an impact that she's having and people actually listening to her and politicians listening to her really does bring about hope.
We're going to grab our trash bags and we're going to walk around the edge of the park to pick up litter.
Lindsay Cathcart of the Rock Creek Conservancy, who leads the group, says meeting with others to do community cleanups like this one helps the local environment, but is beneficial to the overall well-being of the students as well.
So there are certainly these big picture issues that the young people can't turn a switch and fix. So doing this work has a very quick, tangible impact that affects the emotional and environmental health of the students and of the overall ecosystem.
Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.
It's time for our entertainment report. VOA has hosted live music performances by artists for decades. Today, we'll enjoy one such vintage performance by an Afrofusion band from Zimbabwe. Heather Maxwell, host of Music Time in Africa, is here to tell us more. Heather?
Hey, Esther. Hi, everyone. Yes, so this is the band Mukumba from Zimbabwe, and they were here in 2016. It's vintage, not too old, but in 2016. And it's just a beautiful tune that they did when they were in the studio. It's called Kumkanda. And what he's saying, what they're singing about is they're inviting all the tribes of the world to come and enjoy their kind of music and their way of doing things.
Okay, let's watch.
Yeah.
Such a great band, Heather. I miss those days when you used to bring everybody in the studio. Prior to COVID, what else are they planning to do? What's their next move?
Well, this band has been quiet since COVID, except now they are on tour. So in June, they're going to be in Europe, and I think they're coming to the United States. Not sure yet, but we think so.
Heather, many thanks. You always bring us the best on Fridays.
My pleasure.
Be sure to join Heather Maxwell each Friday for another exciting Africa 54 entertainment report. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our new Facebook page, facebook.com/VOA Africa. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.